I sat down with my friend and astrologer Malini to talk about Indian movie star Amitabh Bachchan, the ups and downs of his life, the dramas, the movies, the women. You'll love this. Check it out. Hey folks, it's Sam, and as you see, I'm here with my good friend and astrologer, Malini Iyer, and we're going to be talking about the chart of the famous Indian celebrity Amitabh Bachchan, and it's going to be fun. I have just learned a little bit about him here because I grew up in the U.S. and I don't know anything about Indian celebrities, but I hear so often my Indian viewers and friends ask me to do case studies of some of these folks, and I've made a few attempts before where I'm about to do it, and then I realize that I don't know the person well enough to comment about just their chart. So I haven't really done it, but I wanted to bring my good friend Malini on to take us through this chart, and I've already just learned a few things about him, and I'm looking forward to getting into the juicy details in the chart. So welcome, Malini.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
You like this guy. You love him. You can't wait.
I was born in the 80s, and he was a big star in the 80s. And I've grown up watching his films and saying his dialogues and trying to pull out the swag with my friends using his dialogues from movies. So it's really fun. My brother used to really like him, and my brother was born in the late 80s and would not be able to say his name, so he used to call him Auntie Bachchan.
Yeah, I needed a little tutor as well, a tutorial on Amitabh Bachchan.
Yeah, and for everybody who's watching here, what we're doing here today, I have learned it from the level 1 course, certification course that Sam teaches. And when this whole pandemic hit, Sam did a lot of mini courses. There were weekend courses, and a lot of juice was put into one of them that we are going to use a lot today, which is called Rashi's, Rulers, and the Holistic Zodiac.
You have that handout, right? Show that.
I have the handout, if everybody can see it.
Yeah.
This was a 2-day course, and Sam really broke down the houses, the Rashis, the zodiac signs, and we're going to use all the principles today, and you can see how everything comes together. It's a great case study.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for that. And yeah, that those courses were sort of mini courses. They were 8 hours, so they're pretty comprehensive as well. And many of them had a follow-up weekend as well. So it winds up being pretty deep dive, but it was into specific things. And so yeah, that one was about the connections between the signs, the houses, and the rulers, and how to really bring together a lot of those things to really take your planets in signs and the house connections and all deeper. So I'm glad we'll be tripling down and doubling down on some of those principles. So we have his chart up here, and so why don't you take us through his chart? Now his chart is the one on the left. Actually, let me just change the view here just for now. We'll use the one chart large view so we can see it really big, because we're just talking about the Rashi chart right now. Then we'll bring up another view later.
Okay. So Amitabh Bachchan, this is 1942, is pre-independence India, and his birth time was actually mentioned in his father, Harivansh Rai Bachchan, was a famous writer. He was an author of Hindi literature. And so that's where we get the birth time from. And that makes Amitabh Bachchan a Capricorn rising. Amitabh Bachchan is a movie star. There are people every day that gather outside his house. He's so famous. He's really big. And when he came into the movies, which was in the late 60s, early 70s, he was the unconventional hero. He was very tall. Indian heroes are, India has not seen a lot of tall people. The average height is 5'6", 5'10" in men.
I go to India and I'm like giant.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm almost 5'10", but I mean, it's average height here. I'm like, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and he's way above 6 feet, so he was unconventionally tall and he was unconventionally slim. And Indian guys were supposed to be a little bit on the heavier side, and so were the heroes, so were the actors. And you can see that from just the sign Capricorn, right? Capricorn is the alligator. If you think about the alligator, it's long and slender. Amitabh Bachchan is tall and slender.
It also says the for Saturn, excuse me, I'm going to interject here at times, but
that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. But Saturn is also tall and thin. It literally says tall and thin, emaciated with long teeth, brittle hair. Saturn is tall. So the Saturn is tall, and also Rahu. Rahu also makes, and Jupiter. So you can see the influence all on the ascendant. Rahu, this is a Rashi aspect. I'm going to double down on Rashi aspects again at some point, but things that influence through Rashi aspects are like fixed part of our nature. So when you see Rashi aspects to the ascendant, it also can show traits. So this is why you would be unusually tall, particularly within your clan or within your family. So for example, even though I'm like average height, within my family, I actually tower over all of the people. My father was like 5'4". My father would have been average or short in India. And my mother is average height. My sister is like 5'2" or something. And I'm like 5'10". So even though I'm not tall, I'm tall within my clan or with, relative to what I could have been. Yeah. So anyway, and I have Rashi aspect. I have a lot of Rashi aspects on the ascendant, and also Rahu in the first. So the things that make tall is Saturn, Rahu, and Jupiter also.
Yeah, Jupiter. And I think Jupiter being in an angle is also Gajakesari yoga, right? And looking
from the moon.
From the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just its aspect, again, it's wide aspect, but it's in the Rashi. It's certainly close enough to be influencing the ascendant. If you drew up what the magnitude is of this aspect, it would be significant.
Yeah. The other thing he's really known for is this low baritone voice and his diction. So he's given his voice to a lot of movies and even radio. People really are drawn to his voice and the way he talks, his pronunciations, his diction, the pace at which he talks. And you can see that because the second lord of speech is Saturn, and Saturn is also well placed. It's forming a Raja Yoga in the first lord in the fifth. It's also retrograde. Sam just did the Shadbala class, so retrograde planets are brighter and closer to Earth. It has Cheshtabala. And then K2 in the second, his voice feels like it's coming from some other world. It's otherworldly.
Yeah. So K2 gives a certain mastery and a certain command of something, especially when it's unafflicted. And again, this K2 is actually getting a Rashi aspect from Jupiter, but it's not afflicting anything, and it's not afflicted itself. So, and it's sort of penetrating, so it can definitely.
Yeah, his voice is definitely penetrating. Like when he talks, you just sit and you listen and you let it wash over you. And he has made a lot of money based on just the way he speaks. So
again, that's also second lord in the fifth. That's also a Dana yoga. It's not just Raja yoga because it's first lord in the fifth, but it's also second lord in the fifth. Second house shows how we can earn our money. And again, K2 also would give a lot of mastery for earning money, at least understanding resources and values, and all of that. So K2 always can give a lot of mastery somewhere, particularly if it's powerful, it's unafflicted, and supported even in some way.
Yeah. And because he's ruled by Saturn, his rise to success was slow, but then he got massive success because Saturn is a slow planet. When he started into movies, he gave like 11 flops, one after the other. Everybody thought his career was over. And then as soon as Saturn Mahadasha started, which was in 1972, he gave hits after hits after hits. He didn't have a flop for over like 10 years or so. So it was pretty big.
So you could see Jupiter Dasha. So it was Jupiter was not so favorable. for his karmas, right? Again, you could say, well, he's got that exalted Jupiter. Why? Well, there's a couple things. Why do you think? I'm sure Malini can take it away. What do you think here?
So Jupiter is at very low degrees. It's Sandhi, so it is unstable. It rules the third and the 12th lord. So third house, and I've seen with actors, they have the third lord plays a role for them to get into acting, because it's skill, using a skill set and your ego identity and being out there in the world. But
oh, that'll be fun. Oh, I'll play this character. Like kids play acting.
Yeah, play acting, correct. And he ran away from home to do that. So 12th lord comes into 12th lord in the 7th house, leaving home, going somewhere else. He came from Allahabad to Mumbai on a dime. He didn't have money, and he was not having any luck doing it, because Jupiter, even though it's in Cancer and exalted, it's at that low degrees where it's not stable. It's called Sandhi. It's the last degree of one sign, and the first degree of the next sign is called Sandhi.
It's right at that point.
Yeah, where the planet is kind of a little unstable. But it did take him to his destiny, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the way to see this, really, I mean, you totally nailed it. But underneath it all, we always have to remember and never forget the principle that the planets are functional benefics and malefics. So this was an exalted Jupiter, and it took him, it got him into films, it got him doing all kinds of things, but it's still the 3rd and 12th lord. It's showing expense, it's showing loss, it's showing perhaps disarray. Again, if we really dialed into the reason why he wasn't as successful, we would see this underneath it all. Even just his wavering confidence, he wasn't as sure of himself. He was probably putting out all kinds of energy that wasn't as concentrated, because this is also a Capricorn person. So again, his mastery, and when he became well known, I'm sure also landed when the Saturn Dasha came. Then he was now embodying that energy, which is native to him. He's naturally Capricorn, so Saturn is ruling him. So in the Jupiter Dasha, Jupiter is giving these activities and these actions and this behavior that is not really his true nature. And he was probably much less confident. He was probably doing too much to try to please other people, or whatever it might be. We weren't there to see it, but it wasn't as integral, because Jupiter is a functional malefic. So,
yes.
But it's still exalted. It's right near the angle, so it's still going to get him doing all this stuff. It still did its job.
Yes.
So that's how you read the functional and natural malefics and benefics. You really want to see it that the ones that are the functional benefics really show our natural energy, our native energy, the thing that feels comfortable, grounded, and that we embody in a very dharmic, powerful way. And the ones that aren't, even if they're natural benefics, they activate something that just something about it feels hard for us to do. And we're not doing it very well.
Yes. And, once he established his career, once we get into the dashas, we'll also see. But he also was, so this is one thing that was very peculiar about Amitabh Bachchan, because he was the first sex symbol in India. In India, like, men and women were not seen as put on that pedestal, but he really, brought that metrosexual, or just like that swag, that style. And it did come when he embodied himself being this tall guy who spoke in this low baritone that nobody else spoke in, and he was slender, and he owned it all. Instead of hunching, he held himself up, had an excellent work ethic, and we'll get into his love story. But he
in the West, we have a very simple thing for it: tall, dark, and handsome. No, that's actually the literal thing that they would say about movie stars. It was literally to be tall, dark, and handsome. That's the way you sum it up. Clark Gable, tall, dark, and handsome. Robert Mitchum, tall, dark, like the old movie stars. That's what they would say about it.
Yes.
So before that, it's an example. Just I'll shut up here in a second, but it's an example of the thing I was just saying before. Once Saturn Dasha started, he's now embodying himself authentically within his own mind. Even though he looked that way before, he wasn't embodying it in Jupiter. Saturn, it's like, okay, yes, I'm the tall, dark, and handsome one. That's me. And I'm in it. I'm landed in it. I'm Saturn as that. I'm that. That's me. And there's just a vibe that comes out when we're in a certain Dasha cycle.
Yes. And of the million interviews I've seen of him and people talking about him, one thing that really is highlighted is that he had excellent work ethic, which means he would come on time. Movie stars were known not to come on time. They would have a 7 o'clock shift, but show up at 2 p.m. He would always show up on time. He would always be ready with hair and makeup and dialogues for his shot. He would never make any of the crew wait, neither his co-actors. He would always show had and he started instilling that in people, and that's Saturn, right? Commitment. Capricorn, step by step, make sure you get there on time. Make sure you do whatever little things that needs to be done to get a job done correctly. He's not just floating in there and just owning it. He got everything in place so that when the moment arises, success can be ensured. And that's a very Saturn way of getting to success. Jupiterian, yeah, go ahead.
And no, also just Capricorn in general, because of some of the other houses, you see other things that show like this. This is one reason why Capricorn is so good in their work. And when you give them responsibility and pressure, first of all, Venus is the 10th house ruler. So again, they have a lot of respect for their coworkers. They're going to respect the people they work with. They're going to bring a respectful and beautiful work environment, Capricorn. And he's got the moon in the 10th. So he's going to be very conscious of how everybody around him feels. He's not going to feel like he's the big important one, the sort of prima donna. And that does nothing but help you in your workplace because people like you, and especially showbiz and all that stuff. So much of it is nepotism, who you know, if people like you, people like to work with you. So that all of that is also really shown by the Capricorn person, where Venus is the 10th lord and the moon for him is even in the 10th. So again, it has other things that might be difficult, but it's also very much supports what that would support.
Yes, I agree. Do you want to get into his timelines and we can go through his story, through his timelines?
Sure.
So there are a few things that Amitabh Bachchan was very famous for that really, brought him a lot of fame or shame. One was his extramarital affair, which came out in 1978 during the filming of a movie where he was already married, he had kids, he had this beautiful family, and he was doing the Indian thing of raising a family and having children and, having his parents come over, all of that. But on the sets of this movie, his co-actor was Rekha, and their affair is still talked about. This is 2020. Their affair is still talked about. It was the talk of the town. The co-actor on the sets was trying to misbehave with Rekha, and Amitabh Bachchan gave him a piece of his mind, and that actually brought up their entire affair to the stage. And it was a very scandalous affair because this is India in the 70s. Nobody.
And it was 1978.
It was 1978. So if you bring up the notes, I think it's there too.
What's that?
If you bring up the notes, it's there too. It was 1978, and it was in Saturn K2. K2 is, so he was writing this Saturn Mahadasha. He had a lot of success. We can see that why, because Saturn is making a Dhana Yoga and a Raja Yoga. I don't think the Saturn rules anything else here.
So it was July 26th, you said. So that's when you had the exact date, right?
No,
that's when he got stabbed in the stomach. Oh, that was 82. I'm sorry. Where is
this? This is 1978. So he's called Big B because he comes off as the angry young man. So the first one, if you just scroll up.
Oh, okay. During the movie. Oh, okay. There we go. During the film of the movie in 1978. Okay, so so you had that, but you don't have the exact date. So that's fine.
Yeah, I don't have the exact date there. I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter. So yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then you can see why Saturn K2 brought out that affair, because K2 rules Rahu in the 8th. Rahu is in Magha Nakshatra. ruled by Ketu, and so it and that eighth house of having these secret affairs and the whole secrecy that just came out.
So what
And
Malini's saying, so explain that again, because I was jumping around here with the screen. So with Saturn K2, and so how does how would you evaluate why K2 would bring out this this hidden scandalous affair?
So Ketu rules the nakshatra of Magha, and we have Rahu there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's activating Rahu in Saturn K2, and this is also his eighth house. Leo is his eighth house. So eighth house has to do with secrecy, affairs, literally love making, all of that.
Yeah, and it's literally it's like shocking secrets from your partner, because literally the house before is the seventh house, and the eighth house is what can destroy the bond with your partner. So it can be something literally like an affair that becomes exposed and exploded out.
Yes, very exposed, and it was very scandalous because Rekha at that time would go to parties wearing a Mangal Sutra, which is a chain of black beads, and a sindoor, which is this red powder on her forehead, which symbolizes marriage. And so everybody was talking about them being secretly married. And then in 1981, and I have that exact date there, a movie was made called Silsila, which was based on this affair. The director was really bold. The director cast him, the lover, in the lover's role, and his actual wife in real life as the wife in the movie. And this is Saturn Venus, and it really brought up, and all the dynamics of that relationship that was talked about was portrayed in the movie. That was in 1981, was Saturn Venus, brought him a lot of fame, brought everybody a lot of fame, and made them the center of attention. And then the director of the movie, Yash Chopra, actually confirmed the affair. He confirmed the affair, and he confirmed that the two were thinking of eloping and marrying, because the other thing that Amitabh Bachchan had was his wife had sworn she would not divorce him. She would not leave him come what may. And she had also called up, and this has come out in autobiographies and biographies of Rekha, that Amitabh Bachchan's wife had called her home for dinner, and then told her plain and straight that come what may, she's not going to leave her husband. So Rekha can do whatever she wants to, can have as many affairs with her husband, but she is not going to leave her husband. And that kind of deterred the whole relationship between Amitabh Bachchan and Rekha, and that started to decline after that, because there was no way they could progress without the wife actually
agreeing to it and walking away. So that's amazing. And so what happened to Rekha after that? Was she scandalized? Was she was she seen to be like a total home wrecker in India and stuff like that?
Yeah, she was seen as a home wrecker. She was seen as a man-eater.
Man-eater. Oh boy, there we go.
Rekha was married once before, and the husband died within a few months of that marriage.
Okay.
And then Rekha tried to marry in the late 80s, and her husband again committed suicide within a year of the marriage. So
we got to look at her. Maybe we'll look at her chart here someday. She sounds like a fun one. Is she one of the ones you sent me?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's go back on this on the timing of this though as well, because again, a few things. So this came out Saturn K2. So again, and obviously, so the thing, the few principles to understand is that when we're looking to read the dashas, we look and see what the planets rule. Okay, and of course, the planets rule signs, rashis, and houses. The signs become houses, but the nodes, they don't have classical rulerships. They rule nakshatras. So here with Saturn Dasha, of course, as we said, the whole Saturn Dasha was filled with a lot of career success. Once he went into Saturn Dasha, it's when he really started to achieve a lot of success because, like we said, he really then embodied his I'm the tall, dark, and handsome movie star. I'm not just in Jupiter trying to make something happen, right? So the Saturn Dasha activated all of these things. First, it rules his ascendant. Saturn is in the 5th house, so it's forming a Raja Yoga, which is when angle lords get into trinal houses or trine lords in angle houses, they form yogas. So this is like the first lord in the 5th house. So again, 5th house things, which have to do with creativity, again, acting, being creative and whatnot, really powerful. And Saturn also rules K2 in the 2nd house. So again, all of that mastery of through his voice and all like what Malini was saying, he really just embodied his nature. But then when he goes, so it's within that Saturn Dasha that he gets into Saturn K2. Now again, K2 is very focused, concentrated energy and one of a lot of mastery for him. And it shows a lot of hidden power and strength, like we're talking about, but also shows other things that are hidden. That again, so that's the first thing we want to look at with K2 is it's going to bring up things that are hidden and particularly values, secrets. Again, it's in the 2nd house of these hidden values, things that maybe he wasn't telling people about. So K2 brings up secrets and things get exposed. Not only that, but now it rules Rahu in the 8th because Rahu is in Magha, which is K2's nakshatra. So now we bring up Rahu, which suddenly blows something up. That's what Rahu does. Suddenly shocking things. And it's Rahu in the 8th house, which can be, whenever Rahu's in the 8th house, dangerous things can happen. You kind of can live on the razor's edge a little bit because the 8th house is also dangerous and Rahu is very sudden. So these sudden shocking disclosures came out about affair and whatnot. Now, again, it was something that was shocking and scandalous, but eventually it also led to this really powerful thing. This movie where, his wife wouldn't leave him. His wife was also an actress, right? And she agreed to play his wife in the movie. I assume Rekha wasn't invited to play the lover, though, right?
Rekha was the lover in the movie.
Oh, so it was all 3 of them.
All 3 of them.
That's insane.
That is insane.
It would be like, it would be like if after Brad Pitt had the affair with Angelina Jolie, that they actually did a movie about that with Brad Pitt himself, Jennifer Aniston playing his wife, and Angelina Jolie playing the lover. That's crazy. And was the movie about the affair? Was that what the movie was about?
The movie was about the affair.
Oh, that's nuts. It would literally be like a movie of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie filming this film while Jennifer Aniston, and it was the real people playing it. Oh, that's insane.
Yes.
Is it any wonder that lives in infamy? That's one of the most daring art imitates life things ever.
Yes.
See, that's cool. That's why now, from that point on, Amitabh Bachchan is legend. That is legend, right? And you get this woman saying, you get these 2 movie stars fighting over you. I don't care. I'm never giving him up. Come what may. I don't care how many times you have an affair with him. I'm not giving up. Amitabh Bachchan is like, yeah, that's right. This movie, she ain't giving me up. Legend. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
See, that's why I want to do this too, because I don't know anything about these folks. So that's why I also wanted to do this, because I want to hear these stories. I live a pretty boring life, so I'll live vicariously through this. Especially in COVID, right? We're all sitting here, so I get to hear all these this legend.
Really legend. You can see it in the D9 too, actually.
Yeah, let's look at that.
So in D9, his Lagna is Cancer. And you can see a lot is happening in his Lagna. He has an exalted Jupiter, a debilitated Mars, and Rahu. So there is a lot of, trying to break the, push that envelope, break boundaries, try that next level thing that is just not talked about. And then the Lagna Lord is in the 7th house with K2. So in D9, if you're looking at marriage or love or relationships, we look at a few things. We look at the seventh house. We look at the Lagna Lord, the Lord of the D9, and the ascendant, what sign it is. So we already talked about Cancer and having all that energy there. And then the Lagna Lord, which is in the seventh house, joined K2. So there's all that confusion.
Well, that's also why K2 Dasha really brought it up in the relationship as well, because K2 brought this sudden, unexpected, crazy thing. But again, you look in the harmonic charts to see what it's going to bring up in these specific areas of life. So then when you look in D9, you see, K2 is joined the ruler in the seventh in the D9. So K2 is going to be very important in his relationships.
Yes. And then the seventh lord, which is Saturn in the D9, Saturn rules Capricorn there, is in the 12th house. So all that hidden stuff has started to rear its head. What is also interesting is the natural karaka of relationships in the D9 is Venus, and it's in Taurus. So his wife is like, I am not leaving him. That's also Ketu, that stubbornness, but also Venus in Taurus, right? And when people have, this comes up in readings too, and I see planets in Taurus, especially relationship karakas, no matter how bad certain things get, if you have any of the relationship karakas in Taurus, the person tries to make it. That Taurus is that fixed aim. It's the fixed earth, so not moving, no matter what. That kind of stubbornness.
It can be to their detriment, but definitely they'll hang in there.
Yeah, they'll hang in there. And it was his wife started having drinking problems, and would be seen at different bars, and people will bring her home because she was just not being able to cope with it, but she would not leave the marriage.
Okay, yeah, so you can see that all these karakas are strong in the D9. The Lord actually goes into the seventh house, which really makes the relationship firm. And then again, but it's with K2 there also, which again, that can show the kind of craziness that the relationship is about, because the seventh house winds up being the actual relationship itself. Like that's the thing you're doing the karkas in the 12th house. Again, that can also be a sort of loss, or also lying. 12th house, any kind of thing with that has to do with other people in the 12th house that can show lies in that area of life. And then also, but as you said, Venus being in Taurus in its own sign shows a lot of, as you say, firmness and staying with it.
Yes. And Saturn is the 7th and the 8th ruler for a Cancer. The 8th.
And so that's
all
also
the we talked about of the 8th house, right? The secrecy and the lies.
Yeah, and it's also a Viparit Raj Yoga here, where it's the 8th lord and the 12th. So again, you can see how that plays out. Is even though there was this terrible scandal that would usually destroy a relationship, the destruction got taken away. Usually it destroys, which is the 8th house, but when the 8th lord is in the 12th, the destruction disappears. That's how you read Viparit Raj Yoga. So the scandal that would have otherwise destroyed the relationship, with the 8th lord and the 12th in the D9, the destruction disappears. So instead of destroying the relationship, she destroyed she made the one who was destroying the relationship disappear.
Yes.
And eventually Rekha, like you said, disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you can read that very simple, powerful yoga in the harmonic chart. Now these are just overall tendencies. This is just the tendency of the relationship overall. But then events happen as a catalyst and makes the karma become real. So in this case, it was Saturn K2. So again, you have to understand, it's not just K2, but it's also Saturn. Saturn is important in the D9 because it's the 7th lord. So this is why that was so powerful then, because it wasn't just K2, which is in the 7th house with the Lagna lord in the D9, but it's Saturn Mahadasha, which is the 7th lord in the D9. So you can see why Saturn K2 would have such a transformative effect on the relationships and how it would actually work through.
Yes. Yes.
By the way, Malini and I are doing this on the fly. We didn't rehearse anything. I didn't. Neither of us knew we were going to say this. So this is all just very organic. The way we do astrology. This is how Malini was trained, and she knows how to do it. And this is all very spontaneous. We didn't write this down. We wrote down dates, and then we look at it and talk about it in real time.
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is the very famous accident that happened on.
Wait a minute. Let me just. I'm sorry. I like to go deeper.
Ahead.
Yeah. No. So I just wanted. So we did the Saturn K2. I want to get into the Venus part too, about how it catapulted his career. Now they make this. I'm fascinated by this damn movie. I ain't letting this thing go yet. I get in there and want to wrestle it to the ground in 15,000 ways before I'm ready to let it go. So that Saturn K2 makes this whole big thing blow up. And we see it in the Rashi chart. We see it in the D9, which again, I mentioned this thing about we're doing this spontaneously because I'm still always shocked and fascinated at how well this works. Really am. I'm still like, okay, this is actually exactly how it works and why it happened. But now that was just Saturn K2. Now I want to get into Venus. Now Venus takes that thing that could have just been again, this is a scandal that could have completely wrecked someone's life. It could have totally wrecked his life.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that public thing, and then now because his wife came out and said, "I'm not giving up no matter what," and now we're going to make a movie about it. It's like he totally, again, that's just the most gangster move ever, right? That's epic beyond anything you could imagine.
Yeah.
And so that happened in Saturn Venus, right? You said that was 1980 or something?
The movie was made in 1981, yeah. Saturn Venus. That's when it was released.
Okay, let's look and see. 81. So it would have been somewhere Saturn Venus Saturn or Saturn Venus Mercury or something.
I have the release date of the movie.
What is it?
It's in the notes. Let me pull it up.
Oh yeah. So I probably have it too. Let me chart notes.
14th August 1981.
Oh yeah, August 14th, 1981. August 14th, 1981 would have been right Saturn, Venus, Mercury.
Yes.
So again, they were doing it and filming it and all probably around here, Saturn, Venus, Rahu. So Saturn, Venus, and then Mercury, it finally comes out. So you can see Mercury here. And even just with this whole Venus, why don't you talk us through it a little bit, Malini?
So
Mercury, Saturn, Venus, and all this.
Okay. So Saturn, Venus. Now Venus is the 5th and the 10th lord in the 9th. So it's forming the 10th lord in the 9th Raj Yoga, right? So it's going to take him to the next level of his success. That's what Raj Yogas are. Venus is also forming a Raj Yoga with Mars, which is the 5th and the 4th lord joined together in the 9th. Mars by itself in the 9th is forming a Raj Yoga.
4th lord in the 9th, that's an angle lord in a trine.
Trine, yes. But
so Venus Mars is because it's an angle and a trine lord in a trine. Go ahead.
Trine, they're joined, yes. Angle and trine lord joined. And then in Saturn, Venus, Mercury, now this Mercury is exalted in the 9th. It's also the 6th lord, so we should not forget that. It's exalted, but it's also retrograde. So it has Cheshtabala. It's closer to the earth and it's brighter. So it's going to amplify things. And then the 9th lord joined the 4th lord is forming a Raj Yoga. The 9th lord, Mercury, joined Venus, which is the 10th lord, forms a Raj Yoga. Right. So many Raj Yogas out here. And Mercury is very close to the sun. So sun will just, it's combust, but it will also amplify all of that. It's not forming a Raj Yoga, but it's going to amplify. Sun is the 8th lord. Amplify all of that. But you can see how many Raj Yogas got activated there. Venus by itself forms a Raj Yoga. Venus with Mars forms a Raj Yoga. Venus with Mercury forms a Raj Yoga. And this Mercury Venus Raj Yoga is extra. It has more power because Mercury is exalted and it's also retrograde. So it's like magnifying the whole thing.
Yeah. And so the 9th lord is really and it's also happening in the Saturn Mahadasha. Again, it's Saturn, Venus, Mercury, like all three of those Dharma lords as well. So it really shows this. Those are the three luckiest planets, is the first, fifth, and ninth house rulers. So it's all three of them. And again, when we look at the nature of this event, it's something in his career. We're going to look at the D10 in a second. But we also have to remember that Saturn, Venus, just that secondary, Saturn K2, the scandal happened, but Saturn Venus is especially crazy auspicious here, because Venus also is the ruler of Saturn in Taurus. It's the ruler of the moon.
Yeah.
Again, Venus itself is a Yoga Karaka planet because it's the 5th and 10th lord. So Saturn Venus in general, you would expect for any Capricorn person, that Saturn Venus is going to be a really powerful time for them, because it's their Lugna lord and it's their Yoga Karaka planet. Regardless of the dignities and other things, here they're very strong. But even regardless of that, it's going to be a time of great auspiciousness, power, identity, just in general. Here, again, Venus is also the ruler of Saturn, which is another really strong principle. So there's so many things that get manifest here. And when you get down to the third level, of course, you also have Mercury. But again, let's also look at the nature of the event. Now we're talking about a film, about relationship, scandal, and all of that. Like that's the thing that happened. So we also can see that in these rulers, especially. In these rulers, we can see, because of particularly the Sun, the 8th lord, is also here. Like the nature of this project, right? We see from the Rashi, like this thing that is, impacting the career. It's creative. Again, that's 5th and 10th lord Venus. But also the third level Mercury, which is the ruler of the Sun, the 8th lord, also of Mars, which is the 11th lord, and ambitious. And you see the struggle, the battle, the fight, the drama. This is just it's like a loaded gun hitting the target right on, like bam. It's like, if you're going to, after something like that, about the most amazing thing you could imagine to get the most out of it would be something like this. And you see how the dashas like make that happen. It's such a crazy thing. So Saturn K2, then Saturn Venus, man, it's just incredible to see this. Now, again, people are saying, well, it's debilitated. Again, so many times we go right to the easiest thing to recognize, and then we wonder why. Well, how come it was good? Venus is debilitated. Again, do not ever let things become oversimplified. First of all, the debility is canceled by the planet being there, by its ruler, canceled or modified. This is a Nichabanga with its ruler. And again, even if it's debilitated, Raja Yogas, which is what Malini was talking about, these angle lords and trinal houses and whatnot, that's what produces results. Dignity winds up showing how much we enjoy the result, or whether the result leads us to higher consciousness, or where it leads us. But if you're just looking at the result and to predict the thing that's going to happen, yogas are what show results. They don't show consciousness. They don't show how much we enjoy it. We might get the thing and hate it. We might get the thing and love it. These all have to do with dignities and other things. But whether or not you get the thing or don't get it is shown by yogas primarily. So here you see that they do get it. They get it in this crazy way that you could have never imagined. And I'm sure it was all these things mixed together. I'm sure it had to be. So do you have backstory about like when it was filmed, or what happened after or during, or anything about that movie? I want to see the damn movie now. I want to watch this thing.
Yeah, the movie became a cult movie. Everybody watched it. Yeah. The director was a really close family friend of Amitabh Bachchan, so he knew the inside stories. And then later on, if you read the biographies of Rekha and then autobiographies of Bachchan, you will see the details of their relationship, and the details of the marriage was brought into the movie. And it became so big that there was no space for that Amitabh Bachchan and his lover Rekha's relationship to survive, because everybody was sympathetic towards the wife. And the whole thing about she not leaving him, that was brought in the movie. And so the movie actually did damage to that relationship, that love affair.
Yeah.
And that's when I think Rekha finally got it, that she's never going to get any support in her pursuit of Amitabh Bachchan, because you know
You can see how that movie has a villain. You can see very clearly how that movie has a villain.
Yeah, yeah. So the movie tried to be neutral, but you can see how she would not get support from the public, from the people especially. She would not get support, and
Right.
it was, I think, the highest grossing movie of the year or something. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So how about the D10? Let's look at the D10 here with that.
So in the D10 we have Aries rising, and we have the 10th lord in the 4th house, which is Saturn in the 4th house, which had to do with a lot with her home. And finally, Amitabh Bachchan, like, giving up that whole thing giving up the affair had to do with also being there for his kids and his family and maintaining that family unit. So we can see that was a big, in Saturn Mahadasha, he also started the family. So the 10th lord helped him. And the 4th lord is in the 10th house. And the 5th lord is in the 10th house, forming a Raja Yoga.
So if we just look at the Dasha planets as well and the nature here, again, we're in Saturn Venus. So if we were to go back and look at what would be the nature of Saturn Venus and then Mercury just by looking at the D10.
So Venus is the 2nd and the 7th.
So let's start with Saturn. So look at Saturn Venus, because his career really took off in Saturn Dasha, right? That's when it was like, you see why Jupiter, because we're talking about how Jupiter was like, he didn't quite succeed. We could see, again, this is how we use the harmonic charts. If we just want to drill down and look, it's Aries ascendant. Jupiter's a powerful planet, but it wasn't until Saturn Dasha where he really started to succeed. And then we're talking about Saturn K2, Saturn Venus here for the career. So what do we see here?
So Saturn Mahadasha itself, Saturn rules the 10th and the 11th house. So 11th house is of fame, 10th house is career. Placed in the 4th house, even though it's not forming a Raja Yoga, the 10th and the 4th are angular houses, so that provides a lot of support. But Saturn Mahadasha in the D10 itself shows that how it made him a public figure, because Saturn rules the 10th and the 11th house, which is being in the public. 11th house.
And Saturn also rules?
It also rules moon and sun.
And sun, especially.
And sun forms a Raja Yoga. Sun itself is very magnifying.
Sun is the Karaka of the career as well.
Career.
It's the Karaka. So it's ruling this powerful sun in the 10th house.
Yes. And so sun is the Karaka of the career. Sun is forming a Raja Yoga by itself. Sun is also forming a Raja Yoga in conjunction to moon in the 10th house.
Yeah, so the first thing to note is the difference between the Jupiter Dasha and the Sun Dasha, looking in the D10. Jupiter's powerful because it's the 9th lord, but it's in the 12th. It's ruling the Lugna lord, but it's also ruling this retrograde Mercury, which is the 3rd and 6th lord. So what Jupiter's ruling in the D10 is much more, it shows why, that's why I said when we were looking in the Rashi chart, it shows why it has this promise and inspiration and whatnot, but it's a functional malefic up here. If we go into the D10, it's a Dharma planet, so it's got a lot of power. It got him started, but it's in the 12th house itself, and it's ruling the Lugna lord again. So this is why Jupiter Dasha really got him inspired to do it. It's literally ruling the Lugna lord in the 9th house, but it's also joined this retrograde Mercury, which is the 3rd and 6th lord. So Jupiter is confusing. You can see why ups and downs, not really kind of catching on. You go into Saturn and kaboom, especially this. Saturn is the 10th lord, and it rules these massive Raja Yogas in the 10th house. This is crazy. I mean, this is like, bam, just what you want. So again, this is why right when Saturn Dasha started, in the D10, it rules this 5th lord in the 10th, this 4th lord, and join the 5th lord in the 10th. And again, his heart, his mind, his actions are like, okay. And I mean, full of commitment, certainty, bam. So this is why Saturn was such a big difference in the career, aside from Jupiter, the two different ones. So again, you always got to look into these specifics when you're noticing. This is how you read the harmonic charts, as a sort of composite of these different areas of life. So Saturn in general has that. He goes into Saturn K2. We see the same kind of thing. There are no nakshatras in the harmonic chart. So K2 is just going to show the second house. Very similar hidden values and stuff like that. But then we get into Saturn Venus. How about Venus here?
So for an Aries rising, it's a Venus is the second and the seventh ruler. And the seventh house is Libra. So Libra is like, Venus in Libra is like just trying to do everything the opposite way, right? And it's trying to create, we always say we equate Libra with balance, but it creates chaos in the process. So the whole affair came to surface, came into public. Venus, the seventh house is the house of the other person. It's the marketplace. So literally their entire affair came to the marketplace. And Venus is actually trying to teach him his own values in the relationship. So especially being in Libra. So that whole chaos that it created in that marketplace, because it's now out for everybody to see, there is nothing hidden, everything is out in the open. That really forced him to drill down and come back to his values and what he had made a commitment to, and his family and his children, and how relationships should work and all of that. But it did that in a very chaotic way.
But it's very powerful here, though, just in general. It's the seventh lord in the seventh house.
Yes.
So this is the D10 chart. So again, you see how his career within this incredibly powerful Saturn Mahadasha, Venus showed where there could easily be an emphasis just very simply on his relationship, and you might even just say you might be involved with your partner in your work during this time. Boy, was that an accurate prediction.
Yeah.
Because again, it's just crazy, because when you look here, he couldn't have been more involved with his partner in relationship, or I'm sorry, in a career at that time. He literally made a movie with her in it, talking about the affair that they just had, public. So, I mean, It's just like crazy.
Yeah, he married his wife when she was at the peak of her career. And, he was being cast with her, but they were using her popularity benefited him when his Saturn Dasha had started. Her popularity is what benefited him. And that also can be seen in the Saturn Venus Dasha, because everybody had a soft corner for the wife, and that the wife's struggle and the wife's pain is what took his career to the next level, because that's what was shown in the movie, right?
Wow, interesting. So his career taking off in Saturn Dasha was in many ways sort of piggybacking off his wife.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I was about to talk about, though, or just illustrate, is that Saturn, Saturn is also aspecting the ascendant here, and it's aspecting the sun moon here, this fourth and fifth house. So were they married at first when his career got benefited, or were they just dating, romantic partners in Saturn when Saturn Dasha started?
I don't know the exact dates, but they dated for a very short while and quickly got married. So they didn't court for a really long time.
So you don't know when he got married to her? You're not sure?
No, I didn't look up the date.
Okay, that's fine. I was wondering, because I wonder if she wasn't first his lover, like romantic partner, which is more fifth house.
She was his romantic partner, but that courtship was so strong, it lasted for a short time, and they immediately.
That's what I'm saying. So that happened in Saturn Dasha, or I wonder if that was in Saturn or in Jupiter, because again, if you can even look it up, can you look it up and see when those two were married? Because again, if it was after 1972, early 72. When they met, again, because the
it is 73, so June
3rd. And that's when they met and got married, or got married.
They married in 73, so they were dating for about a year before that. So June of 73 is when they got married.
Okay, so that's I would expect that. So what I'm drawing out here is the difference between the fifth lord and the seventh lord.
Mm-hmm.
So the fifth lord is aspecting Saturn. So you said that his career benefited so much when he met her as a lover, not as a marriage partner, because they're different. We meet someone and fall in love and have this romance. Romantic partners are the fifth house.
Yes.
The romantic partners don't necessarily become the spouse, which is the seventh house.
Yes.
And the house that's in between the two is the sixth house. So we fall in love and we're all romantic. In the fifth house, oh, you're my lover. And then are we willing to be humbled and be of service to them and work hard for it? If we are, then they can become our romantic partner in the seventh house or the seventh lord. So the difference here is that we have the fifth lord aspecting Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that the romantic partner really benefited him in the Saturn Dasha, that's what we just confirmed. Again, if it would have been the seventh lord, that would have been once they got married or the marriage partner. I'm just making the distinction because that's clearly shown here that it would be when they married and fell in love, that would benefit his career. And that's what you're saying happened, that at first all that success came by his association with her. She was more famous. And then he was exalted after that, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
So go ahead.
He was cast against her in movies. He was not doing well. She was doing extremely well. And so his career benefited by acting with her in movies, but they were also dating at the same time. So I don't know the nitty-gritty of it, whether he was cast because they were dating, but that romance was involved every time they worked together, and then they quickly got married.
Great. Yeah, so that's the connection there. So it fulfills and you see how it's shortly after Saturn Dasha, right? They got married at like a year after it would have started. So it's the same because they would have known each other and been dating during this time. So that's when he really came into fame. So you can see that very clearly here.
Yes.
Great. So you had another. So we had another little case study here about the show. You were talking about getting. I don't remember what it was. Go ahead.
Oh, so if you want to keep going on the career,
okay.
Let's. So what happened was his career started to decline in around 1988. He had a big accident in 82. And we can look at the accident too. That's seen. It was in July of 82.
Saturn's son.
And he was in coma for 8 days. People thought he would die. It brought the entire country to standstill. Everybody was outside the hospital praying for him, praying in front of his house. Every news channel just covered him being in coma for 8 days. And he got...
You said July 82?
July of 82.
What was the day?
26th, I think.
July 26th?
Yes.
That's when he went into a coma? Or that's when he had the accident?
That's when he had the accident and went into coma because of blood loss, the same day. So I think Saturn, I looked at it too, the Saturn by transit was directly over his 8th lord sun.
Yep, exactly. And what's his dasha?
Saturn's sun.
Draw it up, folks. Astrology works. Kaboom! Saturn's sun running the dasha, the sub-dasha of the 8th lord. And for him, I said it before I even knew this was coming up. I said he's got Rahu in the 8th, which is always dangerous because it causes accidents and sudden things. So I said that when we're talking about K2 activating Rahu. What else activates Rahu for him? The sun, because it's in the 8th house. So when he has Saturn's sun dasha, he has an accident and gets into a coma. Just on that level, Saturn's sun, that's 2-level dashas. Then we look at the transits, and like Malini just pointed out, Saturn is right on his sun by transit. Again, Saturn only hits this point once every 30 years or something, 28 years. It's not like this happens all the time. So look, right on his natal sun, and not just the sun, but it also was right on his retrograde Mercury. His retrograde Mercury, it's retrograde and combust, so it's very close to the Earth. So again, both of these, and Mars isn't far away either. So this is an extremely sensitive point in his chart. He's got Mars, Mercury, and the sun all within 1 degree, 1.5 degrees of each other, about 2 degrees actually. And the Saturn is now right in the middle of that whole thing. And so again, Mars also has to do with accidents. Mercury is retrograde. It's also the 6th lord, and the sun is the 8th lord.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So after this accident, I think his recovery involved a lot of other ailments that came up, and we don't need to get into that. But his career started to decline, but there was the stark decline. You could see it from 1988 onwards when he went into Saturn Jupiter. And he did only a few movies between 1988 to 1991. Those few movies, for somebody who would release like 12, 15 movies a year, which is it's a normal pace for people working then. Now India has structured and become a little bit more Western, but people would work at a time on 6 different movies at one time.
It's crazy.
So it kind of declined. Every movie that was released, I think there were 4 or 5, became like a cult hit in that period of time, but it like gradually declined. And we can see why in Saturn Jupiter, his career like really started to decline.
Just like when we saw his Jupiter Dasha, remember? We've been talking about the difference between Jupiter and Saturn. And Jupiter, it was like,
Yes.
So Saturn, Jupiter, yeah.
Saturn, Jupiter. And then when he went into Mercury, now we know his Mercury is exalted and it rules all these planets in the ninth, but it's also the 6th lord. In Mercury Mahadasha, his career became almost zero. He delved into production a little bit. He started a production company in, I think, 1995, which became very scandalous. But that production company got fame in 1996 because it hosted the Miss India pageant, but brought him a lot of debt. It brought him about 90 crore rupees, which is 900 million rupees. I don't know how much it is in dollars, but
I told you it's like $50.
And in Indian terms, the average Indian salary at that time would be like 10,000 rupees. So if you think about 900 million rupees, it's just an unimaginable
That's what
number.
I mean. Yeah. I know 900 million rupees is a whole lot because, like you say, 10,000 rupees would be a salary, and 10,000 rupees is literally like it's maybe $1,000. I think at least the last time I was there, it's about 10 to 1 to the dollar.
Yeah, 10,000 rupees is about $100. $100.
Oh, it's 100, not 1,000. Yeah, so there's like 100 rupees to every dollar, right? Not 10. Yeah. So 10. Yeah, so 10,000 rupees is like $100. I was saying before we got on, you go to India and you get like, oh, I got 50,000 rupees, and it's like that's like $50.
Yes. So there was this massive debt, and we can see why he went into debt in his Rashi chart and in his D10. So in his Rashi chart, Mercury is the 6th lord, but it is joined 6th house has to do with service, debt, humiliation. There were all these creditors who would come literally harass him for that kind of money he had borrowed. 6th lord joined 6th and 9th lord joined 8th lord sun. Mercury is activating all of those 4 planets in Virgo, right? And then the amount of debt that's so magnified is also the 11th lord joins there with Mercury. It's just you can see the highs and the lows. Like he has the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows with that kind of stuff. And then Venus being there, it's forming all these Raja Yogas. But Venus in Virgo, if you're not handling money and things like that, the details of life can be very can create a lot of problems. You'll not feel good at all. And he really felt like he was a beggar at that time. And he has said that in interviews. And he would go to people, and he's almost 60 by then. He would go to people and he would beg to work. Please give me some work so I can pay off this debt.
Yeah, it's very much sixth lord and also Virgo. They can both have that sort of quality.
Yes. And then everything changed for
and
him.
in the D10, you want to look at it in the D10. And again, we're also comparing. One of the things that also you have to do when you're reading charts is you have to compare one dasha to the next. Again, we don't just plot Mercury in the middle of nothing. We had a Jupiter dasha first, then we had Saturn, which was just like just like off the hook, and then you have the one that comes next. We're living a life. We have a standard, right? Where he's used to like this thing. He's been this powerful success. Now Mercury, it's like you still are expecting some version of what you had before, and you're trying to get back to that, and you expect, okay, yeah, I'm the Amitabh Bachchan, I can do this, and it doesn't come out the same way. Now there's a whole other thing going on. Just the difference between Saturn, again, which is so simply strong and powerful. It's a very clear, unambiguous, ridiculous Raja Yoga in the Rashi chart, and especially in the D10 for the career. This is incredibly powerful in all ways. Again, you see Jupiter, there's some power going on, but it's in the 12th. It rules this thing, which is kind of ambiguous. Nothing ambiguous about Saturn. This is the kind of thing you see when someone just gets this massive success. Again, Mercury comes, especially in the D10, it's much more ambiguous. It's in the 9th. It's with the ruler, but it's also the 3rd and 6th ruler. Again, Mercury is the 6th house ruler in both the charts, and in both the D10 and the D1.
Yes.
So you see a lot of 6th house, which is debts, enemies, working hard, competitors, and maybe not winning the competition.
Yes. Yes, not winning the competition, humiliation, that servitude and humiliation. That's how he felt.
Right. And we saw Mercury as the 3rd level dasha in that Saturn Venus Mercury when the movie came out. So at that time when we were looking at Mercury, we could see so much of the power because Saturn and Venus were the Mahadasha and Subdasha above it. Mm-hmm. So then Mercury shows up and is actually ruling Venus, the secondary dasha planet, and whatnot. But if you then place Mercury as the Mahadasha planet, the whole calculus changes.
Yes. Yes.
And what was making you just work hard, and again, even within that film, even in making that film in Saturn, Venus, Mercury, there was enemies, there was work, there was effort, there was a struggle. All of that was being portrayed even in the film. Like I said, you could see all of that even in that film of the struggle and the scandal and the battle and the one woman saying to the other, "You're not taking my man." I mean, that's full-on competition, the whole thing going on. You even saw it with that film, that backstory of Mercury.
Yes. And the humiliation faced as a result of that film. So we can see that. And yes, like you said, we can also see it in D10 because Mercury rules the 3rd, which is he's trying all these things. He tried a corporation. He started a production company. He delved into politics. He tried all kinds of things. He wanted to launch a lot of young actors and was trying to do that. Just got into, beauty pageant. Who does that? He tried all of that. And then also rules the 6th in the D10, and that debt and that service and failures and the life hitting you hard, and so we can see that completely. And then in Mercury Mars, which was I think July of 2000.
Right before Mercury Rahu.
Right before Mercury Rahu. He featured as the host of the show called Kaun Banega Crorepati, which is the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And, we talked about Amitabh Bachchan having this low baritone, strong voice, his diction, and people just loving him. People love him like crazy. And so this show brought him back. It like really turned a corner for him. And the show started in July of 2000 and went up till like December. The first season went up to December of 2000. In that period, that 1.5 year period, he paid off his 90 crore debt, that 900 million rupees debt. That's how much he benefited. And, he was this inaccessible star put on a pedestal And then now he's brought in the public. You can call these numbers and get onto the show. I tried it several times. I was in 10th grade trying to get on the show and, would study a lot.
What do you have to do on the show? It's like a trivia show. You got to answer questions and stuff. I've never watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. What do? You have to answer questions?
Yeah, it's like a quiz, right? Yeah, trivia questions.
Yeah.
Trivia questions, general knowledge.
You wanted to get on it?
I wanted to get on. Everybody wanted to get on it. I would top my class, right? So I wanted to get on the show because I was like, okay, finally all this education comes into play because I'll get to be in front of him. I actually made a portrait of him around that time. It just like made him, and I can send you the picture of the portrait. It's actually
that would be awesome.
And he was just it made him so accessible. Like somebody whom you could not touch you have a chance of sitting in front of that person as a common man and having a conversation. And he came across as very warm. He came across as somebody who would take like the moon in Libra, right? Moon in the 10th house kind of thing. He took care of people. He made them feel so welcome. He would like give hints on the show if people would get stuck. And that really turned a corner for him because till then he was not getting any work. With that show, he started getting work.
And it also, I would imagine, it really kind of humanized him a little more because film and movie stars and all, there's, like you said, there's this big gap between, like, it's this fantasy world, this world of, they're playing these roles and these fantasy roles and whatnot. But a talk show or a quiz show, it's like they're standing there just talking, like you get to see their sort of personality a little bit. I mean, they're still playing a role, but it's much less, they aren't in a different character. They're being themselves.
Yes. And he was the first person in the Indian scene to bridge that gap between, like you said, between the movies and the television. Like they were two different worlds. And he was the first person to bridge that world and make it accessible. And we can see why Mercury Mars did that to him. So Mercury is in the Rashi chart, in the D1 chart. Mercury is the 9th lord, and then Mars is the 4th and the 11th lord. So 9th lord, which is the trine house, joined Mars, which is the 4th lord, angular, forms the Raja Yoga. So it brought him back from that. And the 4th lord also has that quality of the 11th house, so bringing him back into the public and making him accessible.
Yeah.
And then we can see that also in the D10, where Mercury is still the 3rd and the 6th lord, and he worked really hard. That show went on for 4 days a week. For somebody, he's used to working hard, but filming 8 hours a day constantly at the age of 60 was unheard of.
Right.
And then Mars, the Sabdasha, rules D10, Aries, and that first lord is in the 9th house in the D10. So it brought him back. It like infused new life.
And you can see why he's a very 9th house kind of person, which he inspires a lot of inspiration. Again, people think 9th house is just gurus and that kind of 9th house teachers and all. It's actually just anything that's inspiring. Like we get inspired in 9th house areas, which could be, again, I've said this before, even like all kind of, like musicians and celebrities and people that give us hope and inspiration. Like, oh yeah, like that in some ways just make us feel good, but in more ways kind of inspire us. Like where when we see them, we feel uplifted. Is just that quality is also 9th house.
Yes.
So this has been great. I'm starting to lose the light here. My blind closed. And I could keep talking. This is fantastic. But this has been a great case study. You did excellent work here, pulling together these dates and the analysis. And I feel like I really learned something about this pretty interesting guy. I want to see that movie.
I will send you a link to the movie. Yeah.
And I'll put Malini's information, of course, underneath here. She has her own, she does readings, has her own website, classes, all kinds of stuff that Malini does. And so how can people get a hold of you, Malini?
My website is called cosmicartandscience.com. And otherwise, you can email me at Malini, my first name, at cosmicartandscience.com.
Malini at Cosmic Art. And you also have Facebook and YouTube channel and stuff. So we'll have all of Malini's links down there. So we'll do this again. I enjoyed it. I like learning about these Indian celebrities and these all the drama. You're certainly welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity. This was fun.
All right.
Okay, take care.
All right. Bye-bye.